Hua village. Nestled at the base of Mount Hua, this place used to be the hotspot. Think of it like a Vegas of its time. People came, spent money, had a good time, and left with lighter pockets. But alas, that was back when Mount Hua was the talk of the town. Now, well, let's just say it's not the hot ticket it used to be. In its heyday, Hua was brimming with energy, largely thanks to the good old sect sitting high above. Peddlers came in droves, tourists swarmed like it was Disneyland. But now? Yeah, not so much. Time, after all, is the greatest party crasher. Still, one place managed to hold its ground, Tehua Pavilion, the village's main base of operations. And tonight, the top floor is filled with merchants who've had a bit too much to drink and just enough arrogance. Ha! They're all laughing like they just heard the punchline to the world's greatest joke. Spoiler alert, the joke's Mount Hua. Merchant number 1. Did you see the sect leader's face? Man, he was so flustered. Merchant number 2. Yeah, well, he should be. We hit them with an ultimatum. I mean, 100,000 yang. That's no small amount. Any other sect would have doubled their efforts after getting that kind of cash. Merchant number 3. A man ought to know when to pay his debts. And then there's Kong Mun-yun, the owner of Tehua Pavilion, nodding along, playing the part of the gracious businessman, on the outside at least. Inside, though, he's basically rolling his eyes harder than a teenager at a family reunion. Kong's inner monologue. Ugh, these idiots. They think they're praising me? Please, I'm just doing what any shrewd merchant would do, bleeding Mount Hua dry, one loan at a time. See, Kong's no fool. He knows Mount Hua's name still holds some weight, even if the place is now about as relevant as MySpace. Sure, the sect's a shadow of its former self, but people, especially those rich nobles with too much time on their hands, love a good old comeback story, or a tragedy. And Mount Hua? Well, it's looking like the latter. Merchant 4. So, what are you planning to do with Mount Hua, Kong? Oh, don't you worry. Mount Hua's still valuable, even if it's just for people who want to see it fall apart. The others nod sagely, like they've just been let in on some great business secret. Meanwhile, Kong's smiling, but inwardly, he's counting down the days till he can ditch these morons and move somewhere a bit more profitable. Fast forward a bit. The party's over, and Yu Jong-san, one of the silk merchants, is stumbling down the street, drunk on more than just wine. Ah, what a night! So much money's about to come my way. Mount Hua's going under, and I'm going to be swimming in riches. Little does he know, though, his drunken stroll is about to take a very dark turn. Literally. He stumbles into an alleyway so creepy, it's practically screaming, "Bad things happen here." You. Wait, why's the moon gone? Oh, wait, it was never there. Heh, this alley sure is gloomy. And then, boom, he's stopped dead in his tracks by a figure dressed in all black. Mask? Check. Sinister vibe? Check. Definitely giving off "I'm about to rob you" energy. What's this? Am I getting mugged? But no, our masked figure isn't here for loose change. Nope, he's got questions, and you's gonna answer them, whether he likes it or not. Figure. I don't care about your money. Answer my questions, and I'll let you go. Oh, you're in for a tough time, pal. I've got backup. Cue the backup, a group of guards, all armed to the teeth. You with a smug look. You see, you might want to rethink this little Q&A session, friend. But the masked guy? He's not impressed. Not one bit. Masked figure. I really didn't want to make a mess here, but if you don't answer, well, things could get ugly. Yu's guards don't wait for any more chit-chat. They charge in, ready to lay the beat down. And then, kaboom! In the blink of an eye, the masked guy wipes the floor with them. We're talking total annihilation. What the hell just happened? His guards are out cold, foaming at the mouth like crabs on their last legs. The masked man? He's calmly walking toward you, like he's out for a Sunday stroll. Language, friend, it's what separates us from the animals. Shame you wasted your chance to use it. And then, with a casual wiggle of his finger, he beckons you forward. Come on now, don't be shy. And somehow, without thinking, Yu finds himself walking toward his impending doom. Now, since you didn't cooperate earlier, I'm going to need to punish you. But don't worry, I'll make sure you can still talk afterward. You? Wait, what? Too late, buddy. This is going to be a day Yu Jong-san won't forget. Actually, scratch that. He will forget, thanks to the concussion he's about to get. And that's how our drunken, overconfident merchant learned a valuable lesson. When a masked guy in an alley asks you questions, just answer them the first time. It was late at night, and Yu Jong-san wasn't the only merchant who'd had a little too much to drink. The others had already gone home, probably dreaming about the piles of gold they believed were coming their way. Meanwhile, back at the Taehua Pavilion, Kong Mun-yun was busy plotting his next move. He didn't know what had happened to poor Yu down the alleyway, but his mind was preoccupied with his grand plan. Sell off Mount Hua before it completely crumbles, pocket the cash, and get out of Dodge. Kong's inner monologue. This village is dying, just like the sect. Time to get out while the getting's good. But Kong wasn't the only one with big plans. Across the region, whispers about Mount Hua's imminent collapse had spread like wildfire. And there were certain parties who were all too eager to take advantage. Enter our mysterious masked figure, still fresh from his alleyway beatdown of Yu Jong-san's guards. Now, we cut to a different scene, Kong's private office in Taehua Pavilion. He's reviewing some contracts, looking very pleased with himself, when the door slams open. Kong jumps in his seat, knocking over his drink. Standing in the doorway is the very same masked figure who had dealt with Yu and his guards earlier. The atmosphere in the room shifts, Kong's face drains of color, and for good reason. Who are you? Masked figure, casually strolling in. I'm just here for some answers. You can relax, as long as you cooperate. Kong's pulse quickens. He isn't used to being in a position where he has to cooperate with anyone, let alone some masked stranger who broke into his office. But seeing the look in the figure's eyes, or what little he can make out through the mask, Kong quickly realizes this is no ordinary thug. Kong, what do you want to know? The masked figure doesn't miss a beat. He moves closer, his presence looming over Kong like a shadow. Let's talk about Mount Hua. You've been circling them like a vulture for a while now. What's the endgame? Kong blinks, trying to maintain his composure. He's a businessman after all. He's negotiated deals with all sorts of people, but this is different. Mount Hua? It's just business. Nothing personal. They're on the brink of collapse, and I'm simply making sure I am compensated for what I'm owed. The masked figure tilts his head, unimpressed. And the part where you're planning to sell them out to the highest bidder so they can be wiped off the map, is that just business too? Kong freezes. This guy knows too much. His carefully constructed facade is starting to crumble. Look, it's nothing personal. Mount Hua's had its time in the sun, but that era's over. If they disappear, it'll be their own fault for not adapting. The masked figure leans in, his voice dropping to a cold whisper. So you'd rather see an ancient sect erased from history than give them a chance to rise again? All for a few extra coins in your pocket? Kong's throat goes dry. He opens his mouth to respond, but no words come out. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be the one calling the shots. But here he was, cornered by a masked man with no obvious way out. Masked figure. Let me make something clear. Mount Hua isn't going anywhere. And anyone who tries to help them disappear, they'll have to go through me first. Kong's face turns pale as the implications hit him like a ton of bricks. This wasn't some idle threat. The masked figure had already proved how dangerous he was with Yu Jong-san and his guards. If Kong wanted to make it out of this alive, he'd have to tread very carefully. Kong, I understand. I'll back off. No more pressure on Mount Hua, I swear. The masked figure takes one last look at Kong before turning toward the door. Good. Make sure it stays that way. For your sake. And just like that, the masked man is gone, leaving Kong Mun-yun sitting at his desk, trembling. The merchant wipes sweat from his brow, his heart still racing. What the hell had he gotten himself into? Outside, in the quiet of the night, the masked figure moves swiftly through the village. He blends into the shadows, unseen and unheard by the locals. His mission is far from over. As the moonlight glimmers over the rooftops, he slips into the darkness, leaving behind a trail of confusion, fear, and a very shaken Kong Mun-yun. Mount Hua may be on the edge of collapse, but if this masked man has anything to say about it, that collapse won't happen without a fight. All right, buckle up for this wild ride. Cha, Underchand, come again? You sound like you've got a mouthful of marbles. I understand. Good, because we're about to dive into something real juicy. Chung Myung, our lovable bandit, problem solver, crossed his legs like a guy who's been sitting in too many meetings that should have been emails. So, yes? You say Mount Hua owes you over 100,000 yang? Yes. 100,000? Yes. 100,000? Yu Jong-san started sweating buckets, the kind that said, "This man is about to break my kneecaps." He wanted to scream. "That's what I've been saying, you thick-headed bully." Chung Myung was less about resolution through conversation and more about resolution through concussion. Hey, yes? With the way your outfit screams, "I live in my mom's basement," it's hard to believe you ever saw 1,000 yang, let alone loaned out 100,000. You pulling my leg? Yu Jong-san, realizing where the confusion lay, put on his most charming salesman smile. You know the one, the kind that says, "I'm about to sell you a car that'll break down in 2 days." Well, you see, that's the magic of interest. You lend out some money with a little high interest rate, and then bam, the amount snowballs faster than a drunk gambler's debt. Pretty sweet, right? Oh! Yu Jong-san yelped, clutching his head as Chung Myung rolled his eyes. Don't be so damn proud of being a crook. Chung Myung sighed deeply, the way you do when you realize the mess you're about to clean up has been there for centuries. It wasn't just about the debt. It was everything about Mount Hua collapsing under the weight of its troubles. By the way, Chung Myung continued, rubbing his temples, did you say you're the silk merchant of Hua? Yes? And you've owned that shop since when? Yu Jong-san, not sensing the ticking bomb in front of him, puffed out his chest. Why, since my great-grandfather's time. We've been in the business for generations. Chung Myung smiled bitterly, like a man who just realized he's been conned for 100 years straight. This silk shop? It used to belong to Mount Hua. These bastards, he thought. Turns out everything in Hua used to be Mount Hua's. These businesses weren't just here by chance. They were built off the hard work and wealth of Mount Hua. And when things went south for the sect, these folks swooped in and claimed it all, like vultures at a buffet. Oh, my! Chung Myung muttered, and if you listened closely, you could hear the rage simmering in his voice. He kicked Yu Jong-san like a soccer ball, sending the poor man rolling across the ground like a sack of potatoes. Ugh! Yu Jong-san groaned. Chung Myung sighed, staring down at him. It wasn't even worth it. This guy had no idea what he was doing. He probably thought his family really owned the silk shop all along. What should I do with this idiot? Chung Myung mused. Usually, he'd leave this guy black and blue, maybe minus a couple teeth, but Mount Hua had a reputation to uphold. You don't just go around beating people up like a thug, no matter how tempting it is. While Chung Myung was figuring out how to salvage the situation without looking like a back alley enforcer, someone behind him suddenly shouted, "Stop!" Chung Myung turned, unimpressed. Huh? You're awake? One of Yu Jong-san's guards, who had taken a nice little nap courtesy of Chung Myung earlier, had woken up and was back for more. The man pointed his sword at Chung Myung, all fired up and ready for a rematch. You bastard! Using a cowardly sneak attack, the guard sneered. Chung Myung blinked. Me? Sneak attack? Dude, you ran at me. You coward. Chung Myung sighed. Fine, fine. Let's go with your delusion. What do you want? Reveal yourself, the guard barked, puffing out his chest like a rooster who had no idea he was about to be plucked. I need to know the name of the person I'm about to kill. Oh, please, Chung Myung muttered, rolling his eyes. You couldn't even kill time. But the guard was dead serious, flexing his muscles and gripping his sword like he was auditioning for an action movie. He charged at Chung Myung with all the finesse of a runaway ox, swinging wildly. Chung Myung lazily raised his sword, slow and unbothered, like he was swatting away a fly. Clang! Jung Bin, the guard, went flying. Yep, flying. His body hit the ground like a sack of bricks. Learn your place, kid, Chung Myung muttered, shaking his head. He'd fought scarier opponents in his sleep. Just as he was about to walk away, he heard a gasp behind him. He turned to see Yu Jong-san, staring at him with wide, astonished eyes. Ah, crap! Chung Myung cursed under his breath. He realized his mistake. He'd let slip a bit of Mount Hua's signature sword technique in that move. Yu Jongsan might recognize it. The merchant's face lit up, but not in the way Chung Myung expected. He wasn't horrified. Oh no, he looked excited. That's swordsmanship. So clean, so elegant. You're from the Southern Edge Sect, aren't you? Chung Myung froze. Southern Edge Sect? Of all the sects to be mistaken for, it had to be them. But quick on his feet, Chung Myung shrugged. Yeah, Southern Edge Sect. That's me. Yu Jong-san, totally convinced, bowed deeply. I'll tell you anything you need to know. Chung Myung let out a relieved laugh behind his mask. Thanks, I guess. What a world. And that's how you con your way out of a sticky situation, folks. Lessons in life and swordsmanship, courtesy of Chung Myung. Yu Jong-san was now fully convinced that Chung Myung was a high-ranking member of the Southern Edge sect, even though the thought made Chung Myung's skin crawl. Still, a lie that helped avoid an even messier situation? He could live with it? For now. Ask me. I will answer anything, Yu Jong-san said, eyes practically sparkling with admiration. Thanks. Chung Myung grumbled, throwing a mental thank you party for the man's incredible stupidity. And this is where the situation should have ended, right? Nope. The universe wasn't done messing with Chung Myung just yet. Just as he was considering how to wrap things up without any more complications, Yu Jong-san, eager to prove his loyalty to the Southern Edge sect representative, decided it was time to spill some tea. Actually, there's something important you should know. The people of Hua have been deeply mistreated by the people of Mount Hua. They used to be so powerful, and they looked down on us common folk. But the Southern Edge sect has always been fair to us. Stop. Chung Myung interrupted, raising a hand. He could feel a headache the size of the Southern Edge sect itself coming on. The last thing he needed was a lecture on how Mount Hua had apparently wronged these money-grubbing weasels. Yu Jong-san clamped his mouth shut, but his eyes were wide with anticipation, clearly expecting some kind of profound response. Chung Myung scratched his head. He'd managed to pull off the disguise for now, but he was seriously tempted to smack Yu Jong-san again just for the sheer idiocy of it all. Southern Edge sect? Really? It's like thinking your stalker is your secret admirer. It's just wrong on so many levels. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to stay calm. Look, he said, I don't care about your grudges with Mount Hua. I'm just here to do my job. Yu Jong-san nodded eagerly, clearly thinking that whatever job Chung Myung had was Southern Edge sect approved and full of noble purpose. And don't go getting any ideas about me being here to fix all your problems, all right? I'm here for other reasons. Like trying not to strangle you. Yu Jong-san's face fell slightly, but he quickly perked up again. Of course, I won't trouble you with that. Please let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Chung Myung rolled his eyes. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Just as he was about to make his exit, satisfied that the situation was, at least for the moment, under control, Yu Jong-san blurted out, But I'm just so relieved to have someone from the Southern Edge sect here. Finally, we can count on true justice being served. Chung Myung froze. That word, justice, it was like a curse word at this point. This man seriously had no idea who he was dealing with. Justice? From him? If he ever handed out justice, it'd come in the form of a slap to the face and a kick to the groin. He didn't care about some noble sense of righteousness. The only thing on his agenda was dragging Mount Hua back to its former glory, preferably while stepping on every arrogant jerk who thought they could mess with it. But whatever. Let the idiot think what he wanted. Chung Myung had other things to focus on. I'm out of here, he muttered, turning on his heel before anything else could go wrong. As he walked away, he could still hear Yu Jong-san behind him, muttering to himself with a mix of awe and reverence. That Southern Edge sect. So noble, so powerful. Chung Myung's eyebrow twitched. Oh, shut up! If this man kept talking about the Southern Edge sect like that, Chung Myung was going to end up doing something Mount Hua wouldn't be proud of. Again. With the day's nonsense behind him, Chung Myung felt both relieved and frustrated. Relieved that he had successfully fooled Yu Jong-san into thinking he was someone from the Southern Edge sect, but frustrated that it had even come to that. What next? He thought. Someone going to mistake me for a damn monk? But despite all of it, one thing remained clear in his mind. Mount Hua's reputation was still tarnished, its businesses stolen, and its former glory nothing but a distant memory. Chung Myung's jaw clenched. Fine, he thought. You want to play dirty? I'll show you dirty. If these people thought they could just waltz in and take everything from Mount Hua without consequence, they were sorely mistaken. There was a new era coming to Mount Hua, and this time, no one was going to forget it, especially not the idiots of Hua And with that, Chung Myung disappeared into the shadows, his mind already planning the next steps. There was work to be done, lots of it. End of episode 22. Episode 23, Are You from the Southern Edge Sect? 3. Why is he so late? Joe Gould paced around like a cat waiting for its dinner, glancing anxiously at the sky. Dawn was breaking, and the sun was making its sluggish ascent, but Chung Myung was still MIA. If Chung Myung didn't show up before the elders noticed, they'd discover he was missing, and cue riot! Mount Hua disciples weren't exactly known for their love of rules. Sneaking out in a full-body ninja getup? That's just asking for chaos. Joe Gould could already imagine the scene. Angry elders, panicked disciples, and Chung Myung casually strolling back in like he'd just been out for a casual stroll. It'll be absolute hell, Joe Gould thought, shivering at the mere idea. Yoonjong, ever the picture of calm, tried to soothe his friend's frazzled nerves. Calm down. He's not that stupid. He'll be back before we're in too deep, assuming nothing catastrophic happened. He was right. No matter how many times you told Chung Myung not to pull off reckless stunts, he always managed to come back with a story that was somehow even more ridiculous than you'd imagined. If anything, the worst that would happen is he'd return fashionably late. But doesn't he know we're all waiting here for him? Joe Gould's voice cracked with a mix of worry and frustration. As if on cue, the door swung open with a dramatic flourish. Ch-ch! Joe Gould and Yoonjong turned around, their expressions shifting from dread to a mix of relief and exasperation. Sajai! They both exclaimed, like two people who just spotted a long-lost friend at a crowded airport. Chung Myung sauntered in, holding his mask like it was a trophy. He quickly stripped off his mysterious ninja attire, revealing Mount Hua's uniform underneath. Talk about a fashion show with high stakes. Nothing happened, right? Chung Myung asked, looking as nonchalant as someone who had just taken a stroll through a battlefield. That's what we were going to ask you. Joe Gould blurted, practically vibrating with curiosity. Did anything happen at all? Chung Myung's face broke into a grin that was just a smidge too pleased with himself. What could possibly happen? I was treated well, and I treated others well too. Joe Gould's eyebrows shot up. Who did you treat well? Chung Myung thought for a moment. What was his name? You something. Ah, the fabric shop owner. Joe Gould and Yoonjong exchanged bewildered looks that could have been captioned, What is this guy even talking about? It turned out Yoonjong-san, mistaking Chung Myung for someone from the Southern Edge Sect, had given away all sorts of juicy info about Mount Hua. Clearly, the guy had been trying to impress his not-so-enemy, only to end up as an unwitting informant. Chung Myung, while slightly irritated by the whole affair, couldn't help but feel a bit amused. The sect's legendary plum blossom sword technique didn't even register on Yoonjong-san's radar. It was a bit of a blow to Mount Hua's prestige, kind of like being mistaken for a local amateur league when you're actually a world-class team. Seriously though, how do you live in a place like this and not know the basics? Chung Myung grumbled internally. Joe Gould, eager to steer the conversation away from Chung Myung's bizarre adventures, asked, So what happened? Chung Myung clicked his tongue with a dismissive air. Not really something you need to know about. Joe Gould raised an eyebrow. You're a kid too, you know? Chung Myung rolled his eyes with a dramatic flair. Yeah, just gather everyone. We need to train. Again? Seriously? Joe Gould groaned. Chung Myung's eyes widened as if he'd just remembered he was supposed to be the motivational speaker of the century. Listen up. Whether it's pouring rain, freezing snow, or the apocalypse, we train. No breaks, not even if Mount Hua itself falls apart around us. Joe Gould's face tightened with a mix of determination and resignation. He's committed. And if he's leading the charge, I guess we're training every day. All right, we'll gather everyone. But you, Joe Gould began. Oh, I won't be joining, Chung Myung interrupted, waving his hand dismissively as if he were brushing off an annoying fly. Huh? Joe Gould looked like he'd just been handed a riddle. Chung Myung turned to Yoonjong. You know how to train, right? Yes. Yunjong said, a bit more seriously than necessary. Then do it properly, Chung Myung instructed. And you? Yunjong asked, clearly perplexed. I've got other business, Chung Myung said nonchalantly. Yunjong sighed, clearly trying to keep his cool. Right, today you're off the hook. But remember, this training is happening because of you. If you're going to bail out, you better set an example by joining in regularly. Chung Myung threw himself onto his bed, dramatically tossing his arms over his face. The sacrifices I make for this sect. As soon as they left, Chung Myung's thoughts were already churning like a storm. If he couldn't just wipe out the enemies, he had to find a way to prove Mount Hua's claim to those businesses. Why does this have to be so complicated? He grumbled, clutching his head in frustration. The money was rightfully Mount Hua's, but he had to prove it. The sect's old records and ledgers, those would have been helpful if they hadn't been destroyed. If only the sect had been more prepared. Was this all because of me? Chung Myung moaned, feeling the weight of the sect's troubles pressing down on him. But then a spark of hope flickered in his mind. Wait a minute. Sa-young always kept the important stuff safe. His brain clicked into overdrive. His Sa-young would never have kept crucial ledgers where they could easily be found. There had to be a secret warehouse, a hidden vault perhaps, under the sect leader's residence. That's it! Chung Myung's eyes lit up. If there was a secret warehouse, it had to be nearby, cleverly hidden from prying eyes. An underground vault, perhaps? Something that even the sharpest martial artists might miss. Chung Myung barreled out of the room, his mind racing. The residence of the sect leader was in the right spot, with a ridge behind it that could easily hide an entrance. An underground warehouse? He mused, grinning like a kid who just found the best hiding spot for their secret candy stash. He could almost hear his Sa-young's disapproving sigh from the afterlife. Please understand, Sa-young, if it means saving Mount Hua, I'll make sure this treasure remains untouched. Well, unless I absolutely need it. With that triumphant grin plastered on his face, Chung Myung set off on his treasure hunt, ready to uncover the secrets of Mount Hua. Episode 24. Are you from the Southern Edge sect? Chung Myung collapsed onto the floor, feeling like he'd just run a marathon in an oven. I feel like I'm going to die. Ah, the joys of nighttime treasure hunting on a mountain. What could possibly go wrong? Though the garden was compact, it was still perched on a mountain, and digging around in it felt like trying to find a needle in a haystack. And let's not forget, Chung Myung was sneaking around under the cover of darkness, like a thief in a poorly lit spy movie. Damn this body! In his past life, he could outlast a bull on a bender, working nonstop for days. Now this weak excuse for a body was gasping for air like a fish on land. Even interrogating a merchant was more grueling than dealing with a stubborn guard escort. And climbing up and down a mountain? Forget it. Ah! Chung Myung exhaled heavily and channeled his dwindling internal energy into the ground, pressing his palms down as if trying to bribe the earth itself to reveal the hidden warehouse. Ah, damn it! The warehouse could be anywhere under this garden. The only option was to check every inch of the place. It was like searching for a single grain of sand on a beach. But Chung Myung's optimism kept him going. He refused to let this treasure hunt become a colossal waste of time. Ugh! And so, he resumed his excavation efforts. Every dig felt like an epic struggle, but he pressed on, muttering to himself about the sheer improbability of it all. This is like finding a needle in a haystack. In his glory days, he could have scouted an entire mountain with a single thought. Now, he was reduced to using both hands to push a measly amount of energy. Ugh! I am really dying. And it wasn't just exhaustion. His energy reserves were as small as his patience, requiring him to take frequent breaks to recover. What if the warehouse doesn't exist? Am I doing something stupid? His tired mind wandered to dark places, but Chung Myung shook off the negative thoughts. Where there's a will, there's a way. It must be here. Determined, he pressed on. He was convinced the warehouse was here. It was like searching for a diamond in a desert, hopeful yet futile. But he had to try. Once more. Ugh! Once more! I am dead! Once more. Empty? Well, none of my business. But wait a minute. Empty? Chung Myung's eyes widened. He squeezed out more energy and felt something unusual beneath him. Gasp! It was an empty space. Whether it was the warehouse or just a random burrow, he couldn't tell, but it was definitely hollow. Spit it out. With renewed determination, Chung Myung spat on the ground and grabbed a pickaxe. I need to see it with my own eyes to be sure. Time to go full Indiana Jones on this place. Quack! 1 dig. Quack! 2 digs. Ack! 3 digs. He was digging so furiously, his limbs felt like jelly. His back ached like he just wrestled a bear. Anyone trained in martial arts would endure pain, but this was different. This was plain old physical labor, and Chung Myung wasn't exactly built for it anymore. Spit! He spat out dirt, trying to maintain his focus. Come on now. Whether it's your victory or mine, let's see. The reputation of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint was on the line. Ugh! Chung Myung resumed digging with renewed vigor. If there was space down there, he would find it. Dig! 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 Tack! Okay, ay. Huh? Tack! He suddenly felt something different. Lowering himself to the ground, he began peeling back the soil with his hands. Brick? It felt strange. It wasn't the solid earth he expected, but a brick. Great! Chung Myung's face contorted. This didn't seem right. If it was Mount Hua's warehouse, it shouldn't be made of common bricks. But he kept going. He had to see it for himself. Sha! The soil revealed a pattern of bricks. It was clear there was something underneath, but the darkness made it hard to see. Let's see. Chung Myung carefully pried out a brick, trying not to damage it. The brick came loose. He shoved his face into the newly exposed hole. Okay, here is... Chung Myung frowned. There was nothing down below except a hallway. No way. Ah! A hallway? He clenched his fists tightly. This wasn't the warehouse, but a passage leading to it. His lack of energy made it hard to distinguish between a warehouse and a hallway. Great. As he prepared to remove more bricks, he heard footsteps from below. Gasp! Chung Myung nearly panicked. Someone was approaching. Sect leader? He quickly covered the hole with bricks and laid over them, trying to stifle his breathing. Why now of all times? He could get caught, and what would he say if questioned? The last thing he wanted was to explain why this child found this place. Step, step. The footsteps grew closer. It has to be the sect leader. The sect leader's figure appeared in the dark corridor, moving casually, yet purposefully. Fortunately, the sect leader passed by Chung Myung's hiding spot, but the relief was short-lived. The sect leader stopped a short distance away. A wall? In the dark, Chung Myung saw what the sect leader was focused on, a large wall, or rather, a door, at the end of the hallway. He knew about this after all. It made sense. Only the sect leader would know of this secret passage, probably passed down through generations or discovered over time. He must have known this was where the treasures and books were kept. Then the sect leader did something unexpected. He gently traced the door with his fingertips, as if it held some hidden significance. What is he up to? The action seemed meaningless, yet it was imbued with a somber purpose. The sect leader, head bowed, seemed to be grappling with something unseen. Chung Myung realized the truth. The sect leader couldn't open the door. The once mighty figure of Mount Hua was now just a man, burdened and defeated. The man who once stood tall was now bent, like a small village leader weighed down by too many obligations. The sect leader's back trembled with unspoken sorrow. Ah, Chung Myung understood now. He can't open it. It dawned on him how desperate the sect leader must be, watching Mount Hua crumble while being powerless to change it. The sect leader had to remain strong, even if everything around him fell apart. He had to be a pillar of support, even when he was falling apart inside. So he came here, seeking solace in the only thing that might bring hope. Chung Myung watched the sect leader's back, determined to remember this image. After a while, the sect leader raised his head, took a deep breath, and turned to leave the hallway. Chung Myung held his breath until the sect leader's presence was gone. Then he lifted the brick and jumped into the hole. Ch! He had seen something he wasn't prepared for. The fault lies with me. Not just him, but everyone from his time. The world's future was crucial, but so was Mount Hua's. They had chased monsters, but failed to secure the future for those they left behind. It isn't too late now. Mistakes could be rectified. Chung Myung was determined to help restore what was lost. Well then, he turned to the door. Shall we open this damn door first? Chung Myung gripped the door's handle with a mix of hope and trepidation. The door had stood as a symbol of both the sect's past glory and its current plight. He could feel the weight of its history and the pressure of his task. Taking a deep breath, he applied force to the door. It creaked and groaned, as if protesting after years of neglect. With a final heave, it swung open, revealing a dimly lit room beyond. Inside, the space was filled with dusty old books, scrolls, and artifacts. It was a treasure trove of Mount Hua's lost legacy. The dim light cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the room feel both mysterious and forlorn. Chung Myung stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room with a mixture of awe and determination. The clutter of ancient texts and relics spoke volumes about the sect's storied past. This was their hidden trove, their last bastion of knowledge and history. Well, 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 Chung Myung murmured, his voice echoing in the empty room. Looks like I've hit the jackpot. He began to sort through the items, careful not to disturb the delicate layers of dust that had accumulated over the years. Each piece he touched seemed to whisper tales of a bygone era. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility weighing on his shoulders. This wasn't just about finding hidden treasures. It was about preserving the essence of Mount Hua and ensuring its legacy endured. The room was a labyrinth of ancient knowledge and forgotten lore. Every scroll and book seemed to hold a piece of Mount Hua's soul. Chung Myung's determination grew stronger with each discovery. He would make sure that this knowledge wouldn't be lost to time. After what felt like hours, Chung Myung gathered a handful of the most important texts and artifacts. His mind was already racing with plans to restore Mount Hua to its former glory. This was just the beginning, and he knew the road ahead would be challenging. As he prepared to leave the hidden room, he took one last look around. The dust-covered relics and faded scrolls seemed to beckon him to return. He nodded to himself, a silent promise to come back and delve deeper. With the treasures in hand, Chung Myung made his way back to the garden. The night was still dark, but the promise of a new dawn was on the horizon. He had found the key to reviving Mount Hua's legacy, and he was ready to face whatever came next. As he emerged from the garden, he glanced back one last time, a determined glint in his eyes. The journey was far from over, but Chung Myung was now more resolved than ever to see it through. Chung Myung stood in front of the door, tapping his foot like a bored cat, waiting for its owner to open a can of tuna. He was skeptical, to say the least. After all, who wouldn't be? It's not every day you face a door that looks like it's part of a medieval bank vault. Hell, even in the old days, this thing would have needed a dragon with a locksmith hobby to crack it. Before that, check the surroundings first, he thought. Yeah, buddy. 100 years in the future and still paranoid as ever. He knows his Sahyung too well. That old fart would have slapped a booby trap on this thing faster than a dad hides snacks before a family road trip. Can't trust anyone with your loot these days, right? He shook his head, looking for any weird devices hidden around, like he was expecting laser beams and a Tom Cruise drop-down moment. Shh! Oh yeah, it's that kind of day. He spotted the holes in the ceiling, probably meant for some fancy lights that would have made this place look like a bougie art gallery. But now, nah, Mount Hua's running on an ancient version of save money, live better. Seems like they sold the lanterns to keep the sect afloat. It would have been better not to see this. Oof, heavy stuff. He knew the sect was in bad shape, but seeing it firsthand, yeah, that hits harder than getting friend-zoned. The sect leader must have felt the weight every time he walked through this dim-ass corridor, knowing each light that disappeared was like a little flicker of Mount Hua's dying hope. But hey, enough of the emotional flashbacks. Our guy's here to get things done. No time to cry over spilled lantern oil. He turned back to the door, his mind racing. But how do I open this? Ah, there it is. You ever come across something and just think, wait, am I overthinking this, or is this thing just stupid? Yeah, that's exactly where Chung Myung was right now. The door had no handle. Seriously, what kind of cryptic IKEA puzzle is this? He slapped a hand on the door and tried to shove some energy into it, but it was like trying to push a boulder uphill after leg day. Nope. Nada. Insane. No kidding. This wasn't just any door. Oh no, this bad boy was made from thousand-year-old cold iron, which basically meant it was harder than trying to explain cryptocurrency to your grandma. All the money must have gone to this, right? You'd think they could have maybe just sold the damn door to cover their debts. Mount Hua's finances were basically the plot of a bad sitcom at this point. And to make things worse, even in his prime, Chung Myung would have had to be Bruce Lee on steroids to cut through this thing. Now, he was basically a kid in a candy store, but with no money and no teeth. Thousand-year-old cold iron, only a swordsman at the top of their game could slice through it. Or, maybe just someone with a can opener the size of a small country. But then he noticed something. A bunch of weird lines on the door. They weren't just scratches, they were sword patterns. 24 plum blossom sword technique, like some kind of ancient laser key. This is bum bum bum. The patterns were part of the sword technique that had been lost to time, like your car keys when you're already late for work. The sect leader probably spent years staring at this thing, but without the technique, it was like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. No wonder he gave up. But our boy Chung Myung, he knew these patterns. Narrator, switching to serious tone, but still with humor. He's basically a mini version of himself right now. Kid-sized muscles, half-baked internal energy. But if there's one thing this guy isn't, it's a quitter. How am I supposed to do this? That's the question, right? If it were the old days, any disciple of Mount Hua could have opened this thing in their sleep. But now, he's got the skill set, sure, but does he have the juice? Time to find out. Nothing is impossible. Hell yeah, that's the spirit. You either die trying or in this case, vomit a little blood and take a long-ass nap afterward. So, with no other choice, Chung Myung taps into his deepest reserves, the true internal chi. And before you ask, yeah, that's the stuff that keeps you alive. No biggie, just risking his life to open a door. No pressure. I really didn't want to do this. Yeah, no one wants to hack into their life force just to open a damn door. But when Mount Hua's on the line, desperate times, desperate measures. He figured he'd be bedridden for a month or two, but hey, what's a little self-induced coma if it saves the sect, right? With a deep breath, he summoned the true internal chi and slammed it into the sword lines. His fingers glowed with this intense black and purple energy, slicing through the air like a lightsaber from the wrong franchise. Oh yeah, now we're in the thick of it. Each cut felt like his muscles were being ripped apart by wild animals, but he pushed through. Why? Because he's Chung freaking Myung. That's why. And then, after what felt like 1,000 years, it opened. Ah! Victory. Well, sort of. He'd basically turned himself into a blood-spewing ragdoll, but the door was open. His tiny body wasn't too happy about the ordeal, though. He immediately doubled over, coughing up blood like it was an audition for a horror movie. Spitting blood. Reviving Mount Hua is horrifyingly tough. Yeah, buddy. Welcome to adulthood. It's all about grinding away for something, losing sleep, and occasionally coughing up blood. Well, maybe not that last part for most of us. But hey, the hard part's over, and now our boy can finally see what treasure his Sahyung was hiding. Now, shall I check what Sahyung was hiding? With a devilish smile and a spring in his step. Well, all right, let's dive into this narration with some humor while staying true to the story. Chung Myung stepped into the warehouse, his body still reeling from the self-inflicted injuries. But the moment he saw what was inside, he couldn't help but grin. So what was the big secret? A mountain of treasure? Ancient relics of untold power? Nope. Well, this is just sad. The warehouse was empty. Well, almost. A few boxes were scattered here and there, covered in layers of dust so thick you could carve your name in them. Nothing that screamed riches beyond your wildest dreams, or Mount Hua's ultimate weapon. What the hell, Sahyung? This is what you were guarding? An empty room? Talk about an anticlimax. But just when he was about to give up and stomp out in frustration, something caught his eye. At the very back of the room, hidden behind some old crates, was a small, unassuming chest. It didn't look like much, certainly not enough to warrant the whole thousand-year-old cold iron door situation. But Chung Myung, being the nosy little gremlin that he is, couldn't resist checking it out. He limped over, wincing with every step, and knelt down in front of the chest. His heart beat faster. Not from excitement, but because he was low-key worried he might keel over and die at any moment. Let's see what's inside. With trembling hands, he opened the chest. And there, nestled in a layer of old silk, was a book? Oh boy, a book? Just what every warrior wants to find after nearly killing themselves to open a secret vault. Seriously? A book? But then, as he picked it up and wiped off the dust, he realized it wasn't just any book. This was a martial arts manual, one he hadn't seen in a long, long time. And not just any manual. This was the complete, unabridged version of the 24 Plum Blossom sword technique. No way. Now that was worth the trouble. This was the lost technique that made Mount Hua famous, the very foundation of its greatness. And it was here, locked away in this forgotten chest, waiting for someone like Chung Myung to bring it back into the light. Suddenly, all the pain, the blood, the exhaustion, it all felt worth it. With this, Mount Hua had a fighting chance. With this, they could rise again. Sahyung, I finally understand. His Sahyung had hidden the technique to protect it from falling into the wrong hands. He had known that the day would come when someone strong enough, someone worthy, would find it. And that someone was standing in this dusty, half-empty warehouse, with blood-stained robes and a grin on his face. All right, Sahyung, let's see if I can pull this off. With a final glance at the chest and the treasure inside, Chung Myung turned and hobbled out of the warehouse. He was tired, in pain, and probably needed a good long nap. But he had what he came for. And with that, the future of Mount Hua didn't seem quite so bleak anymore. One step closer to reviving the sect. One step closer to greatness. And, let's be honest, probably one step closer to another round of vomiting blood. But hey, that's just a day in the life of the Plum Blossom Sword Saint. Episode 26, Mount Hua Gains a Fortune 1. The room was narrower than Chung Myung had anticipated. Well, that was only natural. If they'd built a massive warehouse out of thousand-year-old cold iron, Mount Hua's finances would have taken a nosedive. They'd have been out of business faster than you could say bankruptcy. He whined every day about being broke, yet he spent money on this nonsense. Chung Myung grumbled as he looked around. It was a room full of stuff, so much stuff, in fact, that it was starting to feel like a hoarder's paradise. But what was he supposed to be looking for first? Money. His eyes darted around, searching for any sign of cash. He imagined piles of gold glistening in the dim light. There had to be something. Some hidden stash of riches that his Sahyung, the miserly old coot, had squirreled away. It's got to be here, he muttered, desperately scanning the room. Yet, all he found were dusty old books and knickknacks. No shiny gold, no stacks of cash, not even a glimmer of something that could be considered treasure. It shouldn't be like this, he said more to himself than anyone else. And no, he continued, with how frugal my Sahyung was, there had to be a fortune stashed away somewhere. But the room had none of the promised wealth, just disappointment. Damn it, he muttered, rubbing his face in frustration. If there had been any money, he could have funded all sorts of schemes. Revive Mount Hua, buy some drinks, then buy more drinks. Ah no, I'm purely focused on the revival of Mount Hua, he reminded himself, shaking off the daydream of endless liquor. He turned his attention away from his fleeting desires to the more pressing matters at hand. Like the bookshelf that caught his eye. This is it. Books lined up neatly on a shelf. Chung Myung approached with a mix of trepidation and hope. This has to be it, he said, pulling out a book from the middle. As he read, a smile slowly crept onto his face. Right! There it was. Mount Hua's own records, meticulously kept by Sahyung. These weren't just ledgers from Chung Myung's time, but included ones from previous generations. It was as if Sa-young had anticipated that someone like Chung Myung would come snooping around. Those bastards are so dead! The ledgers were worth all the effort it took to get into this room. And then there was the second shelf. Oh! Chung Myung nearly shouted in disbelief. The authentic secret arts of Mount Hua. Huh? He squinted at the collection. They looked different from the martial arts he was used to. The secret arts of Mount Hua, nearly forgotten, were gathered here. He scratched his cheek thoughtfully. Those foolish old bastards. They had decided not to pass these secrets to future disciples, yet Sa-young hadn't thrown them away. It was like he'd kept them here for a reason, perhaps believing that Mount Hua's future would benefit from their preservation. Sa-young. Chung Myung felt a lump in his throat. Don't worry, I'll revive Mount Hua to its original state. No, I'll make it even better. With renewed determination, he focused on the task at hand. He knew how to use all the techniques. Writing them down for others was a bit of a hassle, but he wasn't about to keep the secrets to himself. Finally, he reached the third shelf. It was almost entirely empty, except for a single rolled scroll. What's this? He reached for it, unrolling it carefully. If anyone is reading this, it means that the next generation's sect leader has been decided. Sometimes a single line of writing conveys more than 100 words, so I leave my meaning in this humble form. The position of sect leader within Mount Hua isn't a position to lead, as anyone who becomes the next sect leader would naturally come to know. The ones who lead Mount Hua are the precious disciples, and they are the ones who bring growth to Mount Hua. A sect leader's role is to protect and support them to carry out their own will without restrictions. Now that you are the sect leader, I hope you will put aside your own impatience and work for the sake of the sect. Mount Hua is simply Mount Hua. No one person can lead or wield it. Remember this when you are tired from life's difficulties and the heavy burden on your shoulders. Mount Hua will not fall. Mount Hua is Mount Hua. Whether it declines or flourishes, it will stay as Mount Hua. As sect leaders, we merely protect the spirit of the sect in our generation. Pray that the will of Mount Hua, which our ancestors protected, be passed on to future generations. And nurture our descendants to continue our will so that we remain eternal. I leave you a heavy burden as the sect leader of the previous generation, the 21st sect leader of the Great Mount Hua, Jang Mun. End. Chung Myung read the scroll silently. It wasn't meant for him, but it felt oddly personal. Right, that man really nagged a lot. With a sigh, he folded the scroll carefully and tucked it away. The other items would go back to Mount Hua, but this scroll, well, that would stay with him. Okay then. Chung Myung turned around with a grin. There wasn't much, but this should be enough. He had the ledgers, the most crucial items. With them, Mount Hua could reclaim its finances and dig itself out of debt. But something felt off. Wait a minute. He paused, sensing something was amiss. Wait! His mind raced as he thought about the third shelf. Sa-young was known for his obsessive organization. 2 full shelves, 1 empty? No, that man would have lost his mind. Chung Myung dashed back to the empty shelf. There has to be something. The empty shelf nagged at him. It didn't make sense to use a whole shelf for just 1 scroll. If anyone else had come across this, they might not have noticed, but Chung Myung wasn't just anyone. He grabbed the shelf and moved it aside. Nothing behind it. He felt around the floor, covered in iron. Chung Myung infused it with energy. Maybe I'm wrong? As he prepared to give up, he heard a soft tuck. Yes! Suddenly, the floor beneath him gave way. He tumbled backward, the sound of his fall echoing through the corridor. Stars danced in his vision. Wasn't that too loud? He quickly glanced toward the entrance. Thankfully, no one seemed to notice. More importantly, he'd found something. Chung Myung scrambled to the newly revealed hole. You sneaky bastard! A hidden compartment, ingeniously concealed. Light poured from the entrance, illuminating the path. He squeezed through, finding himself in a small, cramped space. In that place, Chung Myung's eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. Episode 26, Mount Hua Gains a Fortune 1. The room was narrower than Chung Myung had anticipated. Well, that was only natural. If they'd built a massive warehouse out of 1,000-year-old cold iron, Mount Hua's finances would have taken a nosedive. They'd have been out of business faster than you could say bankruptcy. He whined every day about being broke, yet he spent money on this nonsense. Chung Myung grumbled as he looked around. It was a room full of stuff, so much stuff, in fact, that it was starting to feel like a hoarder's paradise. But what was he supposed to be looking for first? Money. His eyes darted around, searching for any sign of cash. He imagined piles of gold glistening in the dim light. There had to be something. Some hidden stash of riches that his Sahyung, the miserly old coot, had squirreled away. It's got to be here, he muttered, desperately scanning the room. Yet, all he found were dusty old books and knickknacks. No shiny gold, no stacks of cash, not even a glimmer of something that could be considered treasure. It shouldn't be like this, he said more to himself than anyone else. And no, he continued, with how frugal my Sahyung was, there had to be a fortune stashed away somewhere. But the room had none of the promised wealth, just disappointment. Damn it, he muttered, rubbing his face in frustration. If there had been any money, he could have funded all sorts of schemes. Revive Mount Hua, buy some drinks, then buy more drinks. Ah no, I'm purely focused on the revival of Mount Hua, he reminded himself, shaking off the daydream of endless liquor. Eh! He turned his attention away from his fleeting desires to the more pressing matters at hand. Like the bookshelf that caught his eye. This is it. Books lined up neatly on a shelf. Chung Myung approached with a mix of trepidation and hope. This has to be it, he said, pulling out a book from the middle. As he read, a smile slowly crept onto his face. Right! There it was. Mount Hua's own records, meticulously kept by Sahyung. These weren't just ledgers from Chung Myung's time, but included ones from previous generations. It was as if Sahyung had anticipated that someone like Chung Myung would come snooping around. Those bastards are so dead! The ledgers were worth all the effort it took to get into this room. And then there was the second shelf. Oh! Chung Myung nearly shouted in disbelief. The authentic secret arts of Mount Hua. Huh? He squinted at the collection. They looked different from the martial arts he was used to. The secret arts of Mount Hua, nearly forgotten, were gathered here. He scratched his cheek thoughtfully. Those foolish old bastards. They had decided not to pass these secrets to future disciples, yet Sahyung hadn't thrown them away. It was like he'd kept them here for a reason, perhaps believing that Mount Hua's future would benefit from their preservation. Sahyung. Chung Myung felt a lump in his throat. Don't worry, I'll revive Mount Hua to its original state. No, I'll make it even better. With renewed determination, he focused on the task at hand. He knew how to use all the techniques. Writing them down for others was a bit of a hassle, but he wasn't about to keep the secrets to himself. Finally, he reached the third shelf. It was almost entirely empty, except for a single rolled scroll. What's this? He reached for it, unrolling it carefully. If anyone is reading this, it means that the next generation's sect leader has been decided. Sometimes a single line of writing conveys more than 100 words, so I leave my meaning in this humble form. The position of sect leader within Mount Hua isn't a position to lead, as anyone who becomes the next sect leader would naturally come to know. The ones who lead Mount Hua are the precious disciples, and they are the ones who bring growth to Mount Hua. A sect leader's role is to protect and support them to carry out their own will without restrictions. Now that you are the sect leader, I hope you will put aside your own impatience and work for the sake of the sect. As Chung Myung continued to bask in his newfound fortune, the space around him seemed to grow smaller and tighter. He tried to get a better view of all the treasures, but the cramped quarters made it difficult. Still, his excitement couldn't be dampened. Look at this, he marveled, running his hands over the gold bars and glittering gems. I'm richer than I ever thought possible. He took a moment to catch his breath and regain his composure. The realization of the magnitude of his find was just starting to sink in. This wasn't just a stroke of luck. It was a game changer for Mount Hua. His thoughts raced with possibilities, plans to use the wealth to restore Mount Hua to its former glory, and then some. Drinks? Sure, those were on the list too. But first and foremost, he needed to ensure that this treasure was used wisely. With a smirk, he began to organize the treasure in his mind, imagining how each piece would fit into his grand plan for Mount Hua. Let's see, he muttered, if we can get the sect back on its feet and then maybe expand a bit. Oh, and don't forget the drinks. Suddenly, He heard a noise. His heart raced as he glanced around the tiny space. The last thing he wanted was to be caught in this hidden vault with no way out. "Is someone there?" he called out, trying to stay calm. There was no response, only the eerie silence of the hidden chamber. Chung Myung let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He couldn't afford to be discovered now. Carefully, he began to gather the gold and treasures, arranging them for easier transport. He knew he had to get this loot back to Mount Hua without drawing attention. "All right," he said to himself. "Time to put this fortune to good use." As he prepared to leave, he glanced one last time at the treasures. The thought of the impact this wealth would have on Mount Hua filled him with an even greater sense of purpose. "Mount Hua will rise again," he declared with conviction. With that, Chung Myung made his way out of the hidden vault, determined to use this incredible stroke of luck to secure a bright future for his sect. His heart was full of excitement and a bit of mischief, knowing that the journey ahead would be anything but ordinary. As he exited the chamber and began the process of transporting the treasure, he couldn't help but chuckle. Who knew my old Sahyung had this kind of sense of humor? Indeed, it seemed that fate had a quirky way of delivering exactly what he needed when he least expected it. And so, with a renewed sense of purpose and a fortune to back him up, Chung Myung stepped into the future of Mount Hua, ready to turn the tides and make history once again. Hyunjong awoke to the harsh reality of morning sunlight creeping through his window. For some, it's a symbol of a fresh start, but for him, it was like a daily reminder of impending doom. 5 more days to scrape together 100,000 yang, or Mount Hua would be history. Just 5 days, which seemed to be mocking him as he tried to stay positive. As he pondered the gravity of the situation, he closed his eyes, trying to shut out the relentless pressure. He knew he couldn't give up. The survival of Mount Hua depended on his ability to gather the needed funds, or the once proud sect would become a footnote in history. Suddenly, a burst of urgency shattered his gloom. "Sect leader!" came a panicked shout. Hyunjong forced a composed expression, ready to face whatever news was coming his way, even if he felt like a punch-drunk boxer in the ring. Unjeom, the usually unflappable caretaker of the White Plum Blossom boarding house, was waiting outside, looking like he'd seen a ghost, or at least a particularly angry one. "What's going on?" Hyunjong asked, frowning. Unjeom, still looking like he was in a state of shock, replied, "I think you need to come and see this." Hyunjong's curiosity was piqued. Unjeom's usual stoicism was replaced by a sense of urgency that suggested something serious had occurred. Following Unjeom, he was led through the forest towards the Lotus Peak. As they climbed, he saw third-class disciples strewn about like rag dolls, utterly exhausted. They looked as if they'd been through a battle with a particularly unforgiving treadmill. "What happened here?" Hyunjong asked, bewildered. Unjeom seemed more flustered by the moment. "Chung Myung! Where is Chung Myung?" Hyunjong's confusion deepened. Why was Chung Myung, an overeager new recruit, being summoned in this chaos? "I'm over here," came a voice from behind a tree. Out staggered Chung Myung, looking less like a martial artist and more like a member of the undead. "What did you do to yourself?" Hyunjong asked, horrified by Chung Myung's ghastly appearance. I just trained a bit too hard," Chung Myung mumbled, barely able to stand. Unjeom cut in. "That's not the point right now. You need to see what Chung Myung found." Hyunjong, unable to ignore the severity of Unjeom's tone, followed them further into the forest, where an old box was partially uncovered in the earth. His eyes widened as he saw the gleaming gold and the books beside it. "Where did this come from?" he whispered in awe, afraid that even asking might make the treasure vanish like a mirage. Unjeom explained. "Chung Myung found it while resting during his early morning training." "Training at dawn? Since when?" Hyunjong asked, trying to keep his composure. "It started when Chung Myung joined us," Unjeom said. Hyunjong's thoughts raced. They could worry about the exact timeline later. What mattered now was the discovery. Chung Myung, with his energy reserves clearly depleted, explained, "I was too tired and sat down on something hard. When I dug it out, I found this." Hyunjong, eager but trembling, approached the box. As he touched the books labeled Great Mount Hua's Village Ledgers, his hands shook uncontrollably. He opened the box carefully, revealing not just gold, but books with titles that made his heart race. Seven Sages' Sword, he read aloud, each word sending shockwaves through his system. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just a financial boon, it was a beacon of hope. As he closed his eyes, a smile spread across his face. The discovery meant that Mount Hua had a fighting chance. It was the kind of miracle that could turn despair into triumph. Hunjong continued to gaze at the books, each title igniting a flicker of hope. The Seven Sages' Sword and other ledgers were not just relics, they were symbols of Mount Hua's storied past and potential future. The golden light and the history contained within these texts seemed to promise a resurgence. What is this? Hyunjong mumbled, still grappling with disbelief. Sect leader. Unjiam's voice brought him back to reality. Calm down. You need to take a look at what's inside. This could change everything for Mount Hua. Hyunjong took a deep breath and carefully picked up the books, handling them as if they were the most delicate artifacts ever discovered. The weight of the moment felt both heavy and light, like a burden and a blessing all at once. As he flipped through the pages of the ledgers, he found detailed accounts of Mount Hua's prosperous past, including records of financial transactions, influential figures, and secret techniques that had long been forgotten. Each page seemed to whisper promises of revival and strength. This could save Mount Hua, Hyunjong said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and relief. We've been given another chance. Chung Myung, who had collapsed onto a nearby rock, looked up with a faint, exhausted smile. I'm glad I could help, even if it nearly killed me. Hyunjong, still processing the enormity of the discovery, turned to Unjiam. We need to secure these. They're more valuable than any gold could be. Unjiam nodded, his usual calm demeanor returning. I'll arrange for the books and gold to be transported safely. We should also prepare to notify the elders and ensure that Mount Hua's legacy is preserved. With renewed determination, Hyunjong felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The discovery of the gold and ledgers was not just a stroke of luck, it was a lifeline for Mount Hua. The sect's survival was no longer just a distant dream, but a tangible reality. As the sun rose higher, casting its light over the revitalized hopes of Mount Hua, Hyunjong knew that the journey ahead would still be challenging. But with this newfound treasure and the unwavering spirit of his disciples, he was ready to face whatever came next. For now, the shadow of imminent collapse had been lifted, replaced by the bright promise of restoration and success. The future of Mount Hua had been secured, at least for today. Episode 28, Mount Hua Gains a Fortune. Sect leader. Sect leader, open your eyes. Hyunjong jolted awake, blinking rapidly. Was it all a dream? No, the box was still right there. The dream wasn't that kind of cruel. Unjiam. Yes, sect leader. Call the merchants, move the box to my residence, and get the older disciples to guard the perimeter. Yes, sect leader. Actually, forget that. I'll move it myself. Now. Hyunjong took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. He needed to be sure everything was as it seemed. But let's be real. If the box held that much wealth, it had to be genuine, right? No. I need to verify it. Hope and anxiety waged war within him. It had been decades since he'd felt this way. Had he ever been this agitated? Unjiam. Yes, sect leader? Bring your things and come down the mountain. Yes. Hyunjong leaped up, then turned abruptly to Chung Myung. Chung Myung! Yes, sect leader. You've done well. We'll talk about it later. Sure. Chung Myung stepped back silently, and Hyunjong, driven by a mix of excitement and caution, grabbed the box himself. He then instructed Chung Myung, take the other kids and head back to the dorm. Got it. Excellent. With that, Hyunjong began his descent. Unjiam followed, carrying the other valuables. The children, left behind, gawked at them with vacant expressions. What just happened? Huh? Among the bewildered kids, Chung Myung's lips curled into a smirk. This should be enough for now. The treasure in that box was just a fraction of what lay in the warehouse. Why only a portion? It's not that Mount Hua wasn't deserving. It's because the first taste should be modest. Overloading them with too much too soon might be overwhelming. Better to start with a manageable amount so they don't choke on their own success. Chung Myung assessed that Mount Hua wasn't ready for a deluge of wealth. They needed to rebuild slowly. He wasn't the one on trial here, but rather the sect. Hyunjong approached him. Sajay. Huh? We were told to go down. Shouldn't we head back to the dorm? Chung Myung nodded. Yes, we should. Then why do you look like that? Ugh, something happened. Chung Myung waved off Yoonjong's concern. The toll on his body from using his internal chi was evident. I should have been more careful. His body, still in a childlike state, wasn't built for the strain he put on it. Naturally, he used more chi than intended. Recovery would be a challenge. You look like you're about to die. I won't die. Really? Would you prefer that I did? Yoonjong turned his head away, avoiding the question. Rude. Are you seriously hoping I'd say I want to live just to make you feel better? Expect what? Quim. Chung Myung clicked his tongue. Looks like I might be bedridden for a month or two. Recovering from this would be tough. Even with caution, he'd need to wait for his body to heal or find some medicinal aid. By the way, how did you find that? It didn't seem normal, especially given the sect leader's shock. Live well, and the heavens will watch over you, so be a good boy from now on. If Chung Myung had divine favor, surely the other kids were in for a blessed life. No one dared to argue. Chung Myung watched as the sect leader descended the mountain. If he's given this much, he should be able to manage. Things will turn out well if he isn't a fool. Let's head down. Right. But where are you going? What? To go down, shouldn't we use that path? Yoonjong pointed to the trail. Seriously asking such an obvious question. Then why are you going up? Chung Myung clicked his tongue in exasperation. Sayung, a warrior needs to think flexibly. There's more than one way down. You can climb up and descend another side. What nonsense is he spewing? Idiot! Anyway, the sect leader and the others are gone, but we still have training. The last 10 will miss their meals today. Run! Yoonjong, before he could express his frustration, dashed toward the peak. The other kids scrambled to follow. Damn it! Can't keep up. Watching them scramble, Chung Myung chuckled. I'll reward whoever finishes first. What should he prepare next time? The box he'd given was just a fraction of what he had. The wealth removed was less than 1/10 of the total. Chung Myung glanced skyward, feeling as if his Sa-young was watching him with a twisted smile. You didn't think I'd eat it all alone, did you? Healthy, moderate amounts, that's the way to go. Heh! Chung Myung smiled and moved on. It's genuine. His heart raced. The answer was anticipated, but the impact was still intense. Hyunjong, trembling, asked, Are you sure? Yes, the ledgers are genuine, and we have the deed under the gold. Hoo-hoo! Hoo-hoo-hoo! Hyunjong struggled to contain his laughter, words failing him. How did this? We've got it! Sect leader! Ha! Hoo-hoo-hoo! He couldn't stop grinning. Who would have thought they'd get such a treasure? What if it had been discovered a week later? He didn't even want to think about it. The heavens haven't abandoned us. Actually, it wasn't the heavens but the ancestors of Mount Hua watching over them. Hyunjong closed his eyes, passion burning brightly. Can we verify the contents of the ledger? These certificates are national. We can prove it. We'll regain the Hua businesses and even Taehua Pavilion. Good. That's great. It was a miracle. Just days earlier, they faced being cast out, but now, with these books, they could reclaim their home and lost businesses. A jackpot. The head of financial affairs, Hyun-young, chuckled. It's unlikely, but even if the ledgers are fake, we can handle the immediate crisis. The wealth in the box alone is worth over 100,000 yang. That's enough to cover everything. Thank God. What a relief. With this money, we can solve all Mount Hua's financial issues. And if we reclaim the businesses, we won't worry about money again. Hyunjong reveled in the sweet symphony of their success. That's not all. Hyun-sang, the head of martial arts, added with a smile. This Seven Sages sword is authentic. I'll examine it further, but there are no errors in this book. Oh. It's also promising that the Falling Flower sword is correct. Though not on par with the others, it's ideal for learning with the Seven Sages sword, serving as a stepping stone. All right. The bamboo leaf sword seems genuine too. Hyunjong was overwhelmed. Speaking now would only make him Episode 28, Mount Hua gains a fortune. Sect leader. Sect leader, open your eyes. Hyunjong jolted awake, blinking rapidly. Was it all a dream? No, the box was still right there. The dream wasn't that kind of cruel. Unjiam. Yes, sect leader. Call the merchants, move the box to my residence, and get the older disciples to guard the perimeter. Yes, sect leader. Actually, forget that. I'll move it myself. Now. Hyunjong took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. He needed to be sure everything was as it seemed. But let's be real. If the box held that much wealth, it had to be genuine, right? No, no, no. I need to verify it. Hope and anxiety waged war within him. It had been decades since he'd felt this way. Had he ever been this agitated? Unjiam. Yes, sect leader? Bring your things and come down the mountain. Yes. Hyunjong leaped up, then turned abruptly to Chungmyung. Chungmyung! Yes, sect leader. You've done well. We'll talk about it later. The sect leader, Hyunjong, finally stood tall with renewed confidence. His leadership had been tested, but now, with this windfall, he was ready to face the challenges ahead. As the dust began to settle, Hyunjong looked around at his surroundings, the weight of the moment sinking in. It wasn't just about the money or the martial arts manuals. They were symbols of hope and renewal for Mount Hua. He had to ensure the sect's survival and recovery. With a determined look, he addressed his disciples. Prepare for the next steps. We need to organize everything and make sure Mount Hua is secure. Giam, still holding his position by the valuables, nodded vigorously. Yes, sect leader. And make sure everyone involved in this affair is brought to Mount Hua, Hyunjong continued. We need to clear out any lingering threats and secure our future. The disciples moved swiftly, their steps echoing with urgency. Hyunjong watched them go, a sense of pride swelling within him. Meanwhile, Chungmyung, who had been watching from a distance, felt a mix of satisfaction and amusement. The sect leader's reaction had been priceless. He glanced at the treasure chest with a smirk. Not bad for a day's work. As he turned to leave, he noticed Yunjong still panting and looking frustrated. Why the long face, Sayang? Chungmyung teased. I don't know how you do it, Yunjong replied, catching his breath. Always managing to stay ahead, even when it seems impossible. Chungmyung laughed. It's all about perspective. Sometimes you just need to think outside the box, or in this, climb up and then come down the other side. Yunjong shook his head, clearly exasperated but amused. You're impossible. Chungmyung grinned. And yet, here we are. Now let's focus on the next step. We've got training and responsibilities. We can't afford to get complacent. As the scene settled, the sect leader continued to organize the next steps. The energy at Mount Hua was palpable, a mixture of hope, relief, and excitement. The future seemed brighter than it had in years, and the trials they had faced seemed a little less daunting. With the discovery of the treasure and the return of the important martial arts manuals, Mount Hua was on the path to recovery and resurgence. Hyunjong knew that while this was a significant boost, the real work was just beginning. They had to ensure that the sect was rebuilt, the resources were managed wisely, and that everyone who had tried to undermine them was held accountable. As he glanced at the bustling activity around him, Hyunjong felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were on the brink of a new era, and he was determined to lead Mount Hua through it with integrity and strength. And so, with a final deep breath and a resolute nod, Hyunjong prepared himself for the challenges ahead. Mount Hua had a second chance, and this time, they would make it count. Episode 29. Mount Hua gains a fortune. Oh my, this is tough. Yu Jong-san groaned aloud, his voice echoing off the rugged cliffs. Climbing Mount Hua was like trying to scale the side of a vertical cheese grater with nothing but a rope that looked like it had been pulled out of Grandma's attic. Even the villagers below had to think twice before attempting it. Luckily, they had a team of professional cheerleaders, air escorts, to help them out. But Yu Jong-san wasn't impressed. Climbing this mountain again, less than a week after their last escapade, was making his muscles ache in ways he didn't know were possible. Ugh, Owner Yu, be strong. I am trying to be strong. Despite the pep talks, Yu Jong-san was struggling like a cat trying to climb a tree it didn't want to be in. It wasn't just the steepness. It was the sheer absurdity of climbing a cliff with a rope that looked like it was about to give out at any moment. No wonder Mount Hua had failed to thrive. It was basically a cliffhanger in every sense of the word. Once I get the money back, I will never come to this place again. He was ready to make like a tree and leave, just as soon as he got his hands on that sweet, sweet cash. As they finally reached a flat area, Owner Kong, ever the optimist, decided it was time for a break. We will take a break here. Oh my, Owner Kong, that's a good idea. My legs are shaking. Owner Yu needs to work out more often. Hoo. I am no stranger to exercise, but I don't think my body will ever get used to climbing this mountain. Owner Yu plopped down on a rock, giving up on any pretense of grace. But Owner Kong, Owner Pang, always one for questions, approached Owner Kong with a furrowed brow. What is it? Why is the sect leader suddenly asking us to come to Mount Hua? Everyone, suddenly very interested, turned to Owner Kong. It was like a game of guess what's going on in the drama, but without the popcorn. Maybe he came up with some money? Owner Kong's smile was softer than a marshmallow, but his words were sharper. Is that possible? 100,000 isn't a small amount. But if it is borrowed, Owner Kong was blunt, like a hammer hitting a nail. There is no one in the world who would willingly lend 100,000 to a dying sect. A person with such a kind heart could never become rich. Surely? Yu Jong-san shrugged as if to say, yeah, right. Then what does Owner Kong think? Why do you think the sect leader has called us? To give up. Owner Kong looked towards the summit of Mount Hua, as if he was waiting for the mountain to give up its secrets. Likely, he must have tried to reach out for assistance and been denied at every turn. It would be distasteful to drag out the suffering until the last moment, so he called us ahead of time to concede. Huh. Yu Jong-san clicked his tongue, more in disbelief than disapproval. This is the first time I've heard of someone calling their debt collectors to their door without anything to pay, just to get rid of them more quickly. What a stiff debtor. Well, he is in a difficult situation because of the debt. Still, he is the sect leader of Mount Hua. Don't speak too rashly about him. Owner Kong's kindness was like a warm blanket on a cold night. Owner Kong is such a kind-hearted person. How can you think so well about someone who borrowed money and hasn't paid it back for decades? Owner Kong just smiled, as if he had all the patience in the world. What I meant was for us to keep our manners. The name of Mount Hua will soon disappear. Why make it more painful for them than it needs to be? The whole world should know of Owner Kong's benevolence. We have such different attitudes. It was nothing. Yu Jong-san watched the scene unfold with a mix of irritation and disbelief, spouting pleasantries while sitting around doing nothing. They were there to seize the sect and kick them out. Why bother with niceties? But Yu Jong-san eyed the summit, his thoughts swirling. Will we really get the money? He was apprehensive. Owner Kong's confidence was impressive, but when money was on the line, every merchant got a little twitchy. If a member of the Southern Edge sect came here, doesn't that mean they are interested in this? The rivalry between Mount Hua and the Southern Edge sect was legendary. Even though it was a tale of the past, Yu Jong-san couldn't shake the feeling that the Southern Edge sect was waiting to pounce. Owner Kong must be thinking of selling it to the Southern Edge sect. Yu Jong-san was set to receive 5,000 niang. To him, that was like finding a treasure chest, enough to retire comfortably, or at least get a really nice vacation. The thought of finally getting that cash had his heart racing. I wonder what the sect leader's face would look like. The mental image of the sect leader's face, contorted in frustration, was almost too good to pass up, but Yu Jong-san quickly shoved those sympathetic feelings aside. Money made people do strange things, like forget old friendships. Let's start climbing now. Yes. With a collective groan, they pushed themselves up and continued their ascent, driven by the lure of money. Each time I see it, it feels strange. One of the group voiced their feelings. It's just a building barely holding itself together. There was a hint of reluctance in the voice, as if seeing the decaying sect stirred something inside. Falling buildings, crumbling walls, and a front gate that looked like it had seen better days. The sect was either torn apart or just neglected for too long. Yet, despite its ruin, there was something oddly captivating about it. The weight of Mount Hua had once been a symbol of strength, and now they were here to deliver the final blow. Everyone seemed to cough in unison, as if the weight of their actions was heavy in the air. Even if they were motivated by money, it was hard to ignore the twinge of guilt for bringing down their old guardians. Let's go in. Only Owner Kong seemed unaffected. He led the way, and the others followed, each step heavier than the last. Is everyone here? As they entered, Unam greeted them with a friendly smile. Elder Unam, nice to see you. I am still not good enough to be called an elder. Please, just call me Unam. As you wish. Unam led them further into the sect. The sect leader is waiting. This way. Owner Kong's face grew serious. Are they able to pay it back? The change in attitude from the previous day had him on edge. Something didn't feel right. Maybe Mount Hua had accepted its fate and was preparing for a dignified exit rather than begging for more time. I feel worried. Kong Munyon, ever the shrewd businessman, was more on guard now that the goal was within sight. It was always in the final stretch that people let their guard down, but not him. As they approached the sect leader's residence, Hyunjong awaited them. We greet the sect leader. When Owner Kong extended his greetings, the rest followed suit. They were at the final hurdle and wanted to get it right. Welcome. You must have gone through a lot while coming up here. Hyunjong welcomed them with a warm smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. I am sorry to take your time. I hope you understand that I had to ask you to come up here instead of me coming down to meet you all. It's no issue at all. We are busy but not busier than the sect leader. So, it is obvious that we should come. Owner Kong responded smoothly, as if he was practicing for an award-winning performance. Rather than that, what? Haha, such a hurry? You must have had a hard time climbing the mountain, so maybe a cup of tea. Sect leader. Owner Kong cut in sharply, putting an end to the pleasantries. It is good to have a cup of tea and talk, but we are merchants, so we would like to discuss the business affairs first. We merchants are people who deal with problems first and then eat or drink later. I hope the sect leader understands that. Of course. I see I was only thinking of myself. Hyunjong smiled, though the smile seemed more like a polite grimace. Then, let's get to the point without wasting time. Thank you. Owner Kong returned the smile, though. Owner Kong returned the smile, though his eyes were sharp and calculating. I have brought you all here today to convey the position of Mount Hua. Position of Mount Hua? Hyunjong raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. Owner Kong was already mentally rehearsing his lines. I have tried every method available, but I haven't been able to find anyone willing to lend money to Mount Hua. In other words, it doesn't seem like I can repay the money within the given date. Owner Kong's words were met with a frown from Hyunjong. Sect leader, we have given you enough time. We also need to earn enough to make a living. We can't extend your deadline any further. Which is why I am saying this. Hyunjong met the eyes of each merchant, his expression earnest. I know that it cannot be delayed any longer, but it is impossible for Mount Hua to make the full payment before the due date. Please understand. Hyunjong bowed his head, a gesture that seemed both respectful and desperate. I can't pay back all of that money, but I can pay a portion of it. So if anyone here would be fine with personally delaying their repayment date, it would help us greatly. The request hung in the air, and a strange silence enveloped the room. The merchants exchanged glances, their faces reflecting shock and embarrassment. It was as if the sect leader had just asked them to do a backflip while balancing on a tightrope. The atmosphere grew tense, and the merchants could only wonder how this unexpected plea would affect their plans. What should we do? One merchant whispered, his voice barely audible. This wasn't part of the plan. Another murmured, looking conflicted. The scene was a far cry from the brisk business transaction they had anticipated. It seemed that Mount Hua wasn't going down without a fight, and the sect leader's appeal for leniency threw everyone off balance. As the room filled with murmurs and shifting eyes, the ultimate fate of Mount Hua hung in the balance, poised on the edge of this crucial meeting. Episode 30, Mount Hua Gains a Fortune 5. Chung Myung, comfortably perched on the eaves of a building, had taken up the role of an undercover spectator. If there were awards for spying, he'd have a trophy by now. His eyes twinkled with amusement as he watched the sect leader and merchants below. So, that's how he plans on attacking? Chung Myung's gaze sharpened. The sect leader's strategy was as enigmatic as the plot twists in a soap opera. Was he trying to drive them to the brink of financial ruin, or was this his grand gesture of mercy? The ambiguity was almost poetic. What was clear was that Hyunjong, Mount Hua's sect leader, was a man of more layers than an onion. Peel away one, and another was bound to make you cry. This is how it should be, Chung Myung thought, observing the sect leader's beleaguered posture. There he was, hunched over and shaking with sadness, clinging to a door like it was the last piece of chocolate in the world. Hyunjong had kept Mount Hua afloat despite its collapsing structure and his own inner torment. The man was a pillar of both strength and vulnerability. Chung Myung, trying to ignore the dull ache radiating through his frail body, mused about the qualities required for a sect leader. It wasn't just about patience. A leader also needed the icy composure of a poker player, able to make decisions under pressure without breaking a sweat. But that shouldn't be all. So, did Hyunjong have what it took? Chung Myung, slightly adjusting his position and grimacing as his back cracked like an old tree branch, wondered if his own aching body could hold out long enough to find the answer. Ack! He grimaced, clutching his waist and trying to ignore the fact that his body felt like it was constantly auditioning for a role in a disaster movie. Ugh, I need to do something about this. Chung Myung took a deep breath and focused. His physical woes would have to wait. The drama unfolding below was too riveting. Did you ask us to delay your repayment? Owner Kong's face was a study in subtle disapproval. It seemed he hadn't expected Mount Hua's sect leader to play the sympathy card. Did he really think that after seeing Mount Hua's sorry state, anyone would believe in their financial recovery? Sect leader, I clearly told you before that there is no way we can delay the payment any longer. Hyunjong, ever the diplomat, didn't take it personally. He responded calmly. Don't get me wrong, I am not asking Owner Kong right now. Owner Kong's confusion was palpable. Hyunjong continued. I am well aware of Hua position. This is why I am asking all of you directly now. Even if it's 100,000 nyang, doesn't each of you have a different amount to receive? Owner Kong's frown deepened. He was about to ask, so, what's the catch? But Hyunjong beat him to it. So I am personally asking if there is anyone fine with being paid at a later time. Owner Kong's eyes widened. It was like he'd just heard the most absurd thing in the world. Even if Mount Hua isn't what it used to be, there are still those who are willing to help us. We didn't get the whole 100,000 yang, but we might be able to pay back a few of you. With your help, Mount Hua won't lose its name. So please, to those who will show mercy in Mount Hua's current situation, in the name of Mount Hua, I will surely repay you. Owner Kong, who'd been poised to retort, now wore a look of incredulity. What nonsense. Yu Jong-san, who had been quietly observing, jumped in, effectively cutting off Owner Kong's next sarcastic remark. So, if we delay the payment date, we will still get the money? Hunjong nodded. The audience was not quite buying it, though. Yes. Yu Jong-san raised an eyebrow. Sect leader, let's be honest now. We all know that Mount Hua might collapse tomorrow. Even the sect leader understands this. If we trust what you said and postpone the repayment date, doesn't that mean there is also the risk of your sect collapsing and us getting nothing? Hyunjong sighed. Does that make any sense? Owner Kong, now more like a shark circling prey, sensed victory. Mount Hua's once great legacy was on the brink of being drowned by the tide of financial pressure. For Kong, this was a gold mine. Owner Yu, he said with a smirk, what should I offer you? Yu Jong-san was left pondering the proposition. Hyunjong continued with his unwavering calm. There is nothing left of Mount Hua. All that remains is the honor of supporting Hua down below for many years. All that I have to offer is Mount Hua's name. Yu Jong-san struggled to keep his composure. Name and history might be invaluable to some, but merchants deal in money, not nostalgia. Asking for time with just a name and history as collateral? That's rich. Yu Jong-san's laughter was almost cruel. Sect leader, aren't you being too stubborn? Hyunjong's quiet response belied the heaviness in his eyes. Was it too much to ask? The mood was thick with tension. It could be too much, Yu Jong-san finally admitted, as though he couldn't suppress a soft tone. But I would like to ask for at least this much. I believe in the name of Mount Hua, which has been protecting Shanxi and the Hua village for hundreds of years. There was a moment of profound silence as the assembled merchants pondered the weight of history and prestige. The name Mount Hua carried a legacy that some could not easily dismiss. I feel that our discussion has drifted a bit off topic. Owner Kong interjected, his eyes sharp as a tack. He laid down the ultimatum. In summary, those who wish to personally delay the payment date will be repaid later, and those who don't will receive payment now. Owner Kong, brimming with a sense of triumph, added, "You must take responsibility for your own actions. The Merchants Association will not provide any help or protection to those who delay the reimbursement date, even if they lose their money." With a pointed gesture, Owner Kong directed, "You may choose. Those who will be paid now stand here, and those who are fine with delayed payment, go over there." Hyunjong, ever the gentleman, nodded his appreciation for the respect shown. "Thank you for this." Owner Kong, feeling his own provocation had fallen short, couldn't wait to break Hyunjong's composure. His anticipation was abruptly halted. Now with this, the sound of footsteps behind him made him turn. To his surprise, it was Yu Jong-san moving to the side, marked for those willing to wait. "Owner Yu?" Yu Jong-san's sour expression was a clear sign of his frustration, but his decision was made. He had chosen to wait. Owner Kong, caught off guard, was left sputtering. What the hell? Kong Munyan's enraged shout echoed through the hall, an unexpected twist in the saga of Mount Hua's final gamble. Owner Kong's jaw dropped as Yu Jong-san made his choice. The other merchants whispered amongst themselves, their eyes darting between Yu Jong-san's resolute figure and the now irritated Owner Kong. "Owner Yu, what are you thinking?" Owner Kong's voice was sharp, but Yu Jong-san's resolve was unshakable. "I'm thinking that Mount Hua, despite its current state, still carries weight and honor. I believe in its name," Yu Jong-san said, crossing his arms. Owner Kong's frustration was palpable. He couldn't believe that despite the bleakness of Mount Hua's situation, someone was still willing to gamble on its legacy. His mind raced as he tried to come to terms with this unexpected turn of events. Kong Munyan's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. "This is ridiculous. What are you doing, Owner Yu? You're siding with a sinking ship." Yu Jong-san met his gaze with a cool stare. Mount Hua may be in dire straits, but its history and impact cannot be so easily dismissed. Sometimes it's worth taking a risk on something that has meant so much to so many. The other merchants were divided. Some looked at each other, unsure, while others nodded in reluctant agreement, moved by Yu Jong-san's conviction. Owner Kong shook his head, clearly exasperated. "Very well. Those who wish to wait will be accommodated as per the sect leader's request. But remember, the responsibility is yours alone. The Merchants Association will not be held accountable for any losses incurred due to delayed repayment." The decision was made, and the tension in the room began to ease, though the atmosphere remained charged. Hyunjong, ever the picture of calm, offered a deep bow. "Thank you to those who have shown mercy. Mount Hua will not forget this kindness." As the merchants began to disperse, the atmosphere shifted from one of heated conflict to tentative hope. The legacy of Mount Hua hung in the balance, but for now, there was a glimmer of reprieve. Chung Myung, still observing from his perch, sighed with a mixture of relief and fatigue. His own situation was far from ideal, but the unfolding drama had made the wait worthwhile. "Well," he mused, "looks like Mount Hua isn't done fighting just yet." As the last of the merchants left, the sect leader's aides moved in to clean up the remaining paperwork and finalize the new arrangements. The future of Mount Hua was still uncertain, but the sect had bought itself some time, and with it, a chance to reclaim its honor and stability.